if I could, kind of on the heels of what I just heard Coach Fisher say, I'm going to share a little story about Rocky Long. Earlier this year in Thanksgiving, we were playing a tournament at CU Boulder and staying at a hotel with the other 4 teams that were competing, as well as the Utah football team, because the Utah football team was playing the Buffs on a Friday. That same day, the Aztecs were playing Wyoming, and if we were to win, we were going to win, I believe, the first ever Mountain West Conference championship. And as would be my nature, and apparently his nature, Kyle Whittingham, who's the head coach at Utah, and I kept running into each other in the weight room. So I saw him on Thursday. I saw him on Thursday night. Friday morning was his game day and was our game day. And, we exchanged pleasantries, talked a little bit about Lane Elliott, who was my counterpart at Utah for many years. And as he was walking out on that Friday, when I knew I wouldn't see him because he was going to compete and leave, he said, "Hey, do me a favor. I hope like hell Rocky wins that game today. And you tell him from me, I couldn't be happier for a football guy to have this accomplishment." And I thought that was pretty cool and pretty unsolicited. We know what we have in Rocky, but here's this guy who, they didn't have as good a season as I think they would have liked to at Utah. He had a huge game where he had to win, and he came back and made a point to tell me, say something to Rocky Long, because in our business, it's as good as it gets. And I think, the rest, as we know, for that day is history. I kind of was hoping Utah would win. I was happy for them, so they won the game. And more importantly, I stayed with my computer and listened to Ted and Chris Ello as the fellas brought it home that afternoon. So couldn't be happier for Rocky and couldn't be happier for San Diego State, because it just continues to speak to this being a place that you want to be and this being a place that you can succeed at. With that, really excited about our team and how we played this past weekend in the pit. In our league, Wyoming, Fresno State, and New Mexico have a commitment to women's basketball like no other. We had 8,000 people there on Saturday night. If you've never seen it, they all had glow sticks. So that was pretty cool when they were introducing them with 8,000 glow sticks. And our job was to make all those glow sticks go whoop, because we doused them out. But our team really embraces that environment, and we had really spoken about the importance of going into the pit with a little bit of swag. You've got to go in there as the defending conference champions and keep those people on quiet and keep their hands on their seats. And we got off to a great start and really dominated the game from beginning to end. And I thought really took another step as a team to doing the things that we need to do to be champions. So really, really proud of that. Obviously have every coach's favorite day yesterday, which was bye, the only day we know we're going to win, and have taken advantage of that, given them a couple extra days of rest. And now we're gearing up for a big contest this Saturday. The guys' game tips at noon Pacific time. So I've arranged it with Fish. There's going to be no drama, no overtime. They're going to win in regulation. It's going to finish about 1:40. Then you have time to get in your car. I will save you a parking spot over here. Tip is at 2 against the Air Force. And for anyone that hasn't been to a game yet, it's National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, which is a really cool and fun day here, and it's going to be 70 degrees starting at 12:30 on the concourse. Every one of our 12 women's sports will be represented, both with their coaches and their athletes. For little ones, all kinds of interactive games and fun. For older ones, opportunity to speak to student athletes and coaches about how to get a scholarship in their respective sports. And then our tip is at 2, and then afterwards we'll do a big poster, autograph, good time had by all. So it would be incredible if we could get a bunch of people out here on Saturday afternoon as we get ready for Air Force.
Coach, you mentioned JJ. A sort of two-part question. I know you watch the men's team play quite a bit. What is it about him as a coach that you appreciate? And the second part is, who is the JJ in your team?
Exactly right. Just from watching him a year ago, and I actually had the opportunity to speak to his mom during the recruiting process because his mom played basketball. And Coach had asked me to kind of visit with her a little bit. So I had maybe an extra interest and insight into JJ when he made the decision to come to San Diego State. On the women's team, it's Gabby Clark. It's the one that you might be the only one that notices them, but without them, you can't do what you do. Selfless to a fault, covers for everyone and everything, is excellent. You know, the thing about basketball is, you know, you've probably heard me say this, when it's played right, it looks like a symphony. And that doesn't mean that you can't have 5 people each get 20 shots, or 5 people each get, everybody has to do their part to make it work. And when you have someone like JJ, who has incredible versatility. I mean, he's a great athlete. I've seen him, we've watched games where he's guarded guys 280 pounds and where he's guarded guys 180 pounds. You know, he brings the ball up the floor. He does, and he always has a smile on his face and a handout to give to somebody else. So I think those two are really similar, both in their games and both in, I mean, I can't speak to their locker room as I can to ours, but Gabby is by far respected by all. And carries a big stick without saying a word.
Hey, Coach, I asked this to the guys too, but with the grind of the season, especially in conference play, do you notice the team maybe kind of hitting a wall physically at some point during the season?
No, I think, you know, what we do is what we do, and you have to understand, like for us, we invert what the guys have done. So we open up with a home loss. Then we have 3 games in 7 days, 2 of them on the road. You know, no matter how you slice it, whether that's in January, February, or March, that's challenging. So you kind of compartmentalize and motivate to, this is what we must do to first beat CSU, to first beat UNLV, to come home and beat Wyoming. And then when you're fortunate enough to be able to be successful with that, then you reward in kind. You know, example, we have a bye this week. We didn't play great last week against Nevada. We were fortunate enough to win. We had a huge game on Saturday night at the Pit because the game was at night because of the men's game in the afternoon. We had to get up at 4 in the morning to get back home. We had to connect. So when I walked in the locker room after the game on Saturday night, the first thing I said was, I don't want to forget to tell you this before I discuss the game. I'll see you Tuesday. And all the brighter and older kids figured out that meant I just canceled practice for Monday. And the young kids they didn't know why everybody else was excited, but they decided, you know, when you're young, you just, when everybody else says yay, you say yay. So you got to throw them bones along the way. You got to, if you have a mature team that takes care of their business, then you can really do it right. And it's a grind. It's not just a grind for San Diego State men because they have to go to Air Force. It's a grind for everybody, and the teams that have the maturity to understand that are the teams that are successful.